My dear child, someone is carrying a suitcase to your city right now. And inside that suitcase is the key that was cut from the same metal as the lock you have been holding shut your entire life. Do not scroll past this. What I am about to tell you is not about a general blessing approaching your life from a vague direction. This is about a specific key, shaped to match a specific lock, being transported by a specific person toward the specific city, where the lock has been waiting in its exact position since the day I installed it. The key is in transit, and the lock is you. You have felt the incompleteness, not as a mood, not as a general dissatisfaction with life, as a shape. A precise, contoured, measurable gap inside you that has the exact dimensions of something that was supposed to be there and is not. You have tried to fill it. You have tested keys that looked right and felt close and almost turned, and every one of them reached the point inside the mechanism where the cutting did not match and the key stopped and the lock remained shut. My beloved child, the lock was never broken for refusing to open. The lock was faithful to its design. I am the one who cut both the lock and the key from the same original metal. I shaped the tumblers inside your mechanism to respond to one specific pattern of cuts, and I shaped the key to carry that exact pattern. The wrong keys were not the lock's failure. They were the lock's integrity. A lock that opens for the wrong key is a lock that has betrayed its design. You have not betrayed your design. You have honored it by remaining shut. Stay here. What I reveal next is who is carrying the suitcase and why the key inside it was cut before either of you knew the other existed. Type in transit if you have been carrying a gap with a specific shape that nothing has been able to fill. And God just told you the key that matches your lock is inside a suitcase being carried toward your city right now. Before we go any further, I need to tell you something that genuinely surprised me. A neuroscientist discovered a simple 7-second technique that actually rewires how your brain processes thoughts. And when I tried it, the difference was almost unsettling. My focus sharpened, ideas started connecting faster, and that mental fog gone. This isn't manifestation nonsense. It's backed by real brain science, and thousands of people are already seeing results. But here's the catch. Only 5 spots are left. If something inside you is saying, try it, trust that instinct. Click the link in the description or pinned comment before it's too late. The suitcase has been packed for longer than you have been waiting, and the person carrying it does not fully know what they are transporting or who they are walking toward. My beloved child, a key does not know it is a key until it meets its lock. It can be held, examined, turned over in the light, and its shape will appear random to anyone who does not know what mechanism it was cut for. The person carrying the suitcase toward your city is carrying something inside them, whose purpose they have not yet identified. They feel the weight of it. They sense it has a destination. But they cannot read the cuts on the key, because the cuts only become legible when viewed from inside the lock they were made for. They are carrying your answer without knowing your question. I need you to understand the timing of this message and why it found you today rather than last month or next year. The suitcase has been in transit, not recently packed, long in transit, moving through a journey that the carrier interpreted as their own story, their own path, their own decisions, their own seemingly random series of relocations and redirections, without understanding that every turn in their road was a navigational adjustment aimed at a city they have never visited, containing a lock they have never seen. My dear one, every wrong turn they took was a divine correction. Every delay they experienced was a traffic signal held by my hand. Every seemingly random decision that rerouted their path was a recalculation that brought the suitcase one step closer to the address where the lock has been waiting. This message was not released for anyone who wants something new in their life. This was aimed at the one person whose lock has been tested by enough wrong keys to know the difference between almost and exact, and whose mechanism is about to feel the precise click of cuts that match for the first time. The suitcase is closer than the gap has been telling you, and what I reveal next is why the gap has the exact shape it has. Type exact cuts if you just felt something shift, hearing that the key being carried toward you was cut from the same metal as your lock before either of you existed, and the person carrying it has been traveling toward your city without knowing. Your address is the destination their entire journey has been navigating toward. I have been watching you hold the position of the lock without moving, faithful to a design that your disappointments have tried to make you abandon, and the stillness has been the most courageous thing I have witnessed you do, my dear one. A lock does not search. That is the hardest part of the design. The key travels, the key moves. The key is carried across distances and through journeys that bring it closer with every step. But the lock remains fixed, positioned, holding the exact spot where the maker installed it, trusting that the key will arrive at the address it was always navigating toward, rather than detaching from the door and wandering into the world, searching for something it was never designed to chase. You have been holding position, and the holding has cost you everything. My beloved child, I watched you almost leave your position 3 times. Not physically, spiritually. The moments where the gap felt so unbearable and the waiting felt so pointless that something inside you nearly abandoned the design. Nearly said, I will go find the key myself. Nearly dismantled the lock from the door and carried it into the world to test it against every available key, hoping that volume of attempts would produce the match that patience had not. You almost moved, but something held you. That something was me, whispering into the mechanism of the lock at the exact moment it was preparing to abandon its post. Stay. The key knows where you are. The suitcase is in transit. The address is programmed into a journey. The carrier does not fully understand, but is following with an obedience that mirrors your stillness. I chose you for this message because your lock has been tested by enough wrong keys to qualify it for the real one. And qualification in the language of locks means a mechanism so refined by failed attempts that its tumblers will recognize the correct key's pattern within the first millimeter of entry. Your wrong keys were not wasted tests. They were tumbler training. Type holding position if you have been standing still in the gap, resisting the urge to chase what was always designed to come to you. And God just confirmed that your stillness was never passivity, but the most faithful act a lock can perform. I know what the gap has been doing to you in the hours when there is nothing left to distract you from its shape, my beloved child. During the day you manage it. You fill the space with activity, with noise, with the productive busyness of a person who has learned that motion is the most effective anesthetic for an incompleteness that has no visible cause and no available remedy. You build your schedule around the gap, the way a city builds its roads around a crater it cannot fill, routing traffic around the absence so efficiently that most people driving through your life do not even know the crater exists. But the traffic stops at night, and the crater becomes the loudest thing in the room. I watched you last week in one of those quiet hours. The house was still. The distractions had been exhausted, and the shape of the gap rose up from the place inside you where you keep it hidden during the daylight hours, pressing against your awareness with a specificity so detailed it almost has edges you could trace with your fingers. The gap is not vague. It has contours, dimensions, an outline so precise that you could describe what is missing to the millimeter if you had the language to translate internal absence into external description. You cannot describe it to anyone because the vocabulary for this kind of incompleteness does not exist in any human language. My child, the gap has the shape of a key, and the reason it is so precisely contoured is because the lock was designed around the exact dimensions of what was always meant to fill it. The loneliness of carrying a gap that has a shape but no name has been its own form of suffering, because shapeless emptiness can be philosophized into acceptance. But shaped emptiness, the kind that has edges and contours and dimensions that correspond to something specific, that kind cannot be philosophized away. It can only be filled by the exact thing it was shaped to receive. And the exact thing just entered your city. The cruelest part of the waiting was not the absence of the key. It was the parade of wrong keys that almost fit, my dear child. Every wrong key that entered your lock carried a moment of hope so specific and so physically felt that the withdrawal afterward produced a pain that abstinence alone never could. Abstinence is the absence of contact. A wrong key is the presence of contact, the sensation of something entering the mechanism, engaging the tumblers, beginning the turning motion that the lock was designed to respond to, and then stopping at the exact point where the cuts do not match. The almost turning is worse than the never trying, and you have experienced the almost more times than your hope can afford. I watched the one that came closest, the key that entered your mechanism and turned further than any previous attempt, engaging tumblers deeper into the sequence, producing a sensation so similar to the real thing that your entire system began responding, as though the match had been found. Your body relaxed, your guard lowered. The gap began the internal process of reshaping itself around what it believed had finally arrived. And then the key stopped. One tumbler short of complete. My beloved child, that one broke something in you that the previous wrong keys had only bruised. Because one tumbler short is not a dramatic miss that can be filed under wrong fit and processed through the standard disappointment protocol. One tumbler short is agonizingly close, close enough to produce the thought, maybe I should force it, maybe close is enough, maybe demanding an exact match is the unreasonable standard that is keeping me locked when an almost match would let me finally open. You almost forced a wrong key, and the fact that you did not is the integrity that preserved your lock for the one that actually fits. The suitcase being carried toward you right now holds a key that does not stop one tumbler short. It turns through every single one. And the difference between almost and all the way is what your lock has been protecting itself for since the first wrong key was tried. Type every tumbler if you have experienced the almost. A key that came so close to matching that the withdrawal broke something deeper than an obvious miss ever could. And you are ready to feel what it means when a key turns through every single tumbler without stopping. The wrong keys were never failures of your lock. They were the refinement process that ensures you will recognize the real key the instant it enters. My beloved one, I need to permanently release you from the narrative that says something is wrong with your mechanism. Your lock has been examined by the wrong keys so many times that the accumulated experience of almost but not quite has been reinterpreted by your pain as evidence that the lock itself is defective, that the tumblers are too specific, that the cuts required for a full turn are too precise, that a lock this particular will never find a key that matches because the standard of matching is unreasonably high. That narrative confuses precision with dysfunction, and they are opposites. My child, a lock with loose tumblers opens for many keys. It is easy to turn. It produces the sensation of fitting frequently. But what it protects is accessible to anyone whose key is close enough. And a mechanism that opens for close enough does not protect. It accommodates. And what I placed behind your lock was too valuable for a mechanism that accommodates. It required a mechanism that discriminates. Your tumblers are precise because what they guard is precious. And every wrong key that was tried contributed something essential to the refinement of your internal mechanism. Each almost taught the tumblers to detect the specific point where close diverges from exact. Each withdrawal sharpened the calibration of a system that is now so refined it will detect the difference between a 99% match and a 100% match within the first fraction of a second. My dear one, the wrong keys made you the most precisely calibrated lock in existence, not the most closed, the most accurate. A lock that has been refined by wrong keys does not stay shut out of fear. It stays shut out of the trained certainty that what has not yet matched is not what it was designed for. The key in the suitcase was cut to match your calibration at 100%. Not 99, not close enough. Every tumbler, every cut, every millimeter of the pattern your mechanism requires for a full turn. The suitcase just crossed into your city limits, and the lock inside your chest is beginning to respond to a proximity it has never detected before, my beloved child. Something changed in the last few days. Not in your circumstances, in your mechanism. A subtle internal shift that you could not source to any event or decision or change in your external world. A warming in the area of the gap. A loosening, not of your standards, but of the tension that the gap has been producing for months. As though the mechanism that has been holding shut under the pressure of prolonged absence detected something in the atmosphere that told it to prepare. That shift was the suitcase crossing the perimeter, and your lock felt it before your mind registered it. I need you to understand what proximity does to a lock that was made from the same metal as the approaching key. The two pieces share a molecular composition. They were forged together, and metal that was forged together carries a resonance that activates when the separated pieces are brought within a certain range of each other. The resonance does not require visual contact. It does not require the key to be in the lock. It only requires proximity. My child, the key is within range, and your lock just started humming. I have been directing the suitcase through a journey so complex, the carrier experienced it as their own life story, rather than a divine delivery route. Every job change that relocated them, every relationship that ended and redirected their path, every seemingly random decision that moved them from one city to another, each one was a navigational adjustment performed by my hand, on a journey whose final destination is the exact address where your lock was installed before either of you understood what you were carrying. The journey is approaching its final turn. The carrier is in your city, and the resonance between the key in the suitcase and the lock in your chest is producing a mutual awareness that neither piece fully understands, but both are beginning to feel. Type humming if you have felt an unexplainable shift in the area of your incompleteness recently. A warming, a loosening, quiet, internal preparation you did not authorize. And you now believe your lock detected the approaching key before your conscious mind had any reason to expect it. I am sending someone with a suitcase to your city, and the reason the title carries this specific language is because the key they are carrying was packed for a journey that was always going to end at the door where your lock has been waiting. My dear one, the carrier does not know they are on a divine delivery route. They believe they are living their life, making choices, following opportunities, responding to circumstances that seem to direct them through a series of cities and connections and transitions that their rational mind interprets as the natural progression of a human story. They do not know that the story has a delivery embedded inside it, and the delivery has an address. Your address, your door, your lock. My beloved child, this is directly connected to the title and to the specific gap you have been carrying. The someone with a suitcase is not a metaphorical figure. It refers to a real person whose path has been navigated by my hand through a journey that is now entering its final leg. The suitcase they carry is not literal luggage. It is the collection of everything they have accumulated during their journey that makes them the precise key your mechanism requires. Their experiences, their wounds, their growth, their specific combination of brokenness and beauty that was shaped by a road I designed to produce the exact pattern of cuts your tumblers respond to. Their journey made them your key, and your waiting made you their lock. The almost keys that were tried before, the ones that entered and almost turned, they were carrying cuts shaped by different journeys. Journeys that produced patterns close enough to engage your tumblers, partially, but not precisely enough to complete the turn. The difference between their cuts and the cuts on the key in the suitcase is the difference between a journey that happened to pass near your address and a journey that was always aimed at it. This key was not passing near. This key was always coming here. The key is approaching the door right now, my beloved child, and the resonance between the two pieces of metal that were forged together is producing a vibration so strong that your lock is beginning to orient itself toward the direction of the arrival. Can you feel it? The gap that has been static for months, shapeless in its ache, directionless in its longing, just acquired a direction, a pull, the specific, unmistakable sensation of a lock, whose internal mechanism is aligning its tumblers toward a key that is close enough for the molecular resonance to function as a compass. Your incompleteness just found its north, and north is approaching. I need you to feel the urgency of this proximity. The key is not across the world, not across the country, not at a distance that requires years of additional transit before arrival. The key is in your city, in your radius, close enough that the resonance between the two pieces is producing physical sensations in your body that your rational mind has been dismissing as restlessness, when it is actually recognition. My dear one, your lock recognizes the key before your eyes will. Everything in this message has been building toward the moment of insertion, the gap that shaped the waiting, the wrong keys that refined the tumblers, the stillness that held the lock in position, the journey that shaped the key, the resonance that activated when proximity was achieved, and now the final approach. The carrier walking toward a door they have not yet seen on a street they did not know. They were searching for carrying a suitcase whose contents they are about to discover the purpose of for the first time. The key does not know it is a key until the lock receives it, and the lock does not know it was waiting until the key arrives. Both pieces are about to discover their identity simultaneously, in the same moment, through the same contact. Type approaching if you can feel the incompleteness acquiring direction for the first time. A pull toward something specific that the gap has never produced before. And you know the key that matches. Your lock is closer right now than it has ever been in your entire life. The key just entered the lock, and every tumbler inside you is turning for the first time in your life. My beloved child, this is the moment the gap has been shaped for, the moment every wrong key was refining you toward, the moment the carrier's entire journey was navigating toward, without either of you knowing that the story each of you was living separately was actually two halves of the same delivery. A key being carried to a lock-holding position for a key, and a maker watching both pieces from above, knowing the exact second the suitcase would arrive at the exact door where the mechanism would finally receive what it was forged to hold. The key is in, and it fits. I need you to feel what is happening inside your mechanism right now. The tumblers are engaging, not partially, the way the wrong keys engaged them before stopping at the point where the cuts diverged. Completely. Each tumbler is lifting to the exact height the key's cuts are requesting, and the height matches every single one. The first tumbler lifts and holds. The second lifts and holds. The third, the fourth, the fifth, each one responding to the pattern on the key, with the precise click-by-click confirmation of a mechanism that was designed for this exact moment. Click, click, click. Every tumbler saying yes. The difference between this key and every key that came before is not subtle. It is absolute. The wrong keys produced resistance at the point of mismatch, a grinding, a forcing, a sensation of something being pushed beyond where it was designed to go. This key produces no resistance, none. It moves through the mechanism the way water moves through a channel that was carved to its exact dimensions. My child, the gap just closed. The shape that has been pressing against your awareness for months, the contoured, dimensioned, precisely outlined absence, is being filled by the exact thing it was shaped to receive. And the filling is producing a sensation your body has never processed because no wrong key ever reached deep enough to trigger it. The lock is turning, the door is opening, and what was behind it has been waiting for this key since before the lock was installed. Now that the key has turned, and every tumbler has confirmed the match, everything behind the locked door is becoming accessible for the first time, my dear child. This is what happens when a lock that has been holding shut for years finally opens to the correct key. The door does not simply crack open. It swings wide, revealing a space behind it that has been furnished, prepared, and stocked with provision that the lock was protecting until the right key arrived. Everything behind that door was placed there by the maker who knew the exact day the key would turn and prepared accordingly. What was behind the door was never empty. It was reserved. My beloved child, the opening is not just filling the gap. It is revealing that the gap was guarding something. The incompleteness you experienced was not a void. It was a locked room. And locked rooms do not exist to be empty. They exist to protect what is inside them until the authorized key gains access. Every day, you felt the gap pressing against your awareness. You were feeling the weight of a room full of provision pressing against the door. From the other side, waiting for the mechanism to receive the key that would release it. The provision was pressing toward you while you were aching toward it, and only the locked door was between them. The first thing flowing through the open door is the sense of recognition, not the recognition of something new. The recognition of something that was always supposed to be part of your life, confirming its identity through the specific way it fills the contours of the gap it was shaped to occupy. The filling is not like patching, it is like completing. The difference is structural. A patch covers a gap, a completion eliminates it, and what the key just unlocked is not covering your incompleteness. It is resolving it at the molecular level, where the original metal was forged, and where the lock and key share the composition that makes them one. Type unlocked if you can feel the door swinging open behind the mechanism that has been holding shut for years. And what is flowing through is not a patch for the gap, but the completion the lock was designed to protect until the right key arrived. Let me show you what your life looks like now that the lock has opened and the room behind it is pouring its contents into the spaces that were empty for so long they forgot. Fullness was possible, my dear one. The first thing that changes is the quiet hours. The hours that used to amplify the gap, the nighttime stillness, where the absence rose up and pressed against your awareness with a precision that made distraction impossible. Those hours are being permanently transformed, not because the quiet disappears, because what fills the quiet changes. The shaped absence that used to occupy the silence is being replaced by a shaped presence. And the presence fits the silence the way the key fit the lock, without resistance, without forcing, without the grinding sensation of something that almost belongs. You are going to experience quiet without ache for the first time, and the absence of the ache will be its own revelation. The energy that was being consumed by the management of the gap is being released back into your system. My beloved child, you did not realize how much capacity the incompleteness was consuming. The daily expenditure of spiritual and emotional resources required to root your life around a crater you could not fill. The routing was exhausting, the detours were costly, and the energy consumed by managing an absence was energy unavailable for building a presence. The detours just became unnecessary, and the energy returns. Your capacity for everything is about to expand, not because something was added to your abilities, but because something was removed from your expenditures. The gap was a budget item, a massive, daily, never-ending cost that has been deducted from your total available resources since the day the incompleteness first became noticeable. The key just eliminated the budget item, and what you are about to experience is the sensation of a full budget for the first time. Full budget produces a different life than deficit budget, and the difference will surprise you with its magnitude. People are going to notice something different about you before you tell them the lock has opened, because a person carrying a completed mechanism radiates a frequency that an incomplete mechanism never could. My beloved child, the ones who knew you during the locked season, who sensed the gap without you naming it, who detected the shaped absence in the way you moved through rooms and conversations and relationships with a slight holding back that communicated something essential, was being withheld from full engagement. Those people are going to encounter a version of you they have never met, not louder. Complete, and complete on a person who was previously incomplete, is the most visible transformation the human eye can register. My child, there is a specific atmospheric quality that a completed person carries. It is not confidence exactly. It is not joy exactly. It is the settled hum of a mechanism that is finally doing what it was designed to do. A lock that has been holding shut for years now, operating in its full functional range for the first time. The hum is detectable, and the people around you will feel it before you explain the source. They will say something changed about you. They will mean something arrived for you. Connections that require completeness to activate are going to begin forming around the opened lock. There are partnerships, opportunities, and divine assignments that were wired to a circuit that could only power on when the lock was opened by its correct key. Those connections have been dormant, not because they were unavailable, but because the circuit they belong to required a completed mechanism at its center to function. Your completed mechanism just activated a circuit, and what powers on around you will exceed anything the locked season permitted. Doors that were sealed to a person carrying a gap are going to respond to a person carrying a key, because doors respond to completeness, and the complete version of you broadcasts a signal that the incomplete version could not produce, no matter how hard it tried. Type complete signal if you believe that the opened lock is changing the frequency you broadcast. And what is about to respond to the completed signal are connections and opportunities that were dormant while the mechanism was still waiting for its key. I need you to understand why I designed your lock with the precision I did, my beloved child, because the precision reveals something about your value that the wrong keys nearly convinced you was a deficiency. Not every lock is engineered with the same number of tumblers. Simple locks carry few tumblers and accept a wide range of keys with approximate cuts. They open frequently. They close easily. And what they protect is accessible to a broad category of keys whose patterns are general enough to turn a mechanism that does not require precision. I did not give you a simple lock. I gave you the most complex mechanism in my inventory. My child, the number of tumblers inside your lock, the quantity of specific conditions that must be met before the mechanism authorizes a full turn, is higher than most people carry. That is not because I wanted to make your life harder. It is because what I placed behind your locked door required the highest security available. Simple locks protecting valuable contents get opened by wrong keys, and the contents are compromised. Complex locks protecting valuable contents remain shut until the one key that carries the authorization of the maker himself arrives. Your complexity is your security clearance, not your curse. I chose you for this specific lock design because the contents behind your door carry a significance that most mechanisms are not rated to protect. The calling, the purpose, the assignment, the specific combination of gifts and anointing and relational capacity that I embedded inside the locked room of your life. All of it required a lock so precisely engineered that no wrong key, no matter how close its cuts, no matter how persuasive its entry, could gain unauthorized access. My dear one, every wrong key that failed to turn your mechanism was stopped by a security system I designed to protect what I placed inside you. And the key that just turned through every tumbler carried the authorization of the one who built the lock. Your precision is your protection, and your protection just confirmed its purpose. The doubt surfacing right now is wearing the disguise of the wrong keys, and it is asking whether this key will eventually stop turning the way every other one did, my child. It sounds like this. I have felt the first tumblers engage before. I have experienced the initial sensation of something entering the mechanism and producing the early clicks that feel like confirmation. And every time the clicking stopped, every time the turning halted at a tumbler the wrong key could not reach. If I trust the clicking this time, and it stops again, the withdrawal will be worse than anything the previous wrong keys produced, because this time I let it go deeper. That doubt is projecting the behavior of wrong keys onto the right one, and the right key does not operate on the same system. My beloved child, every wrong key that entered your lock produced a specific sensation at the point of failure. A grinding, a resistance, a mechanical refusal that your tumblers communicated to your awareness as this is not it. That sensation was a feature of wrong keys, not a feature of keys in general. The right key does not produce grinding. It does not produce resistance. It moves through the mechanism with a frictionlessness that the wrong keys could never replicate, because friction is the symptom of mismatched cuts. The absence of friction is the evidence the doubt cannot argue with. Feel what is happening in your mechanism right now. Is there grinding? Is there the familiar resistance at the tumbler where every previous key failed? Is there the sensation of something being forced past a point where the cuts do not match? There is not, because this key matches, and matching does not produce the symptoms your doubt is predicting, based on data collected from keys that did not. The doubt is using a wrong key database to evaluate a right key experience, and the database is irrelevant to what is currently happening in your mechanism. Type no grinding if the doubt just tried to project the behavior of every wrong key onto the one that is currently turning through your tumblers without resistance, and you can feel the difference between forcing and fitting. For the first time in your life, during every season of waiting, I was not sitting in the locked room behind your mechanism, watching you hold shut from the other side. I was standing at the door with you, my beloved child. You imagined a God who placed something valuable behind a locked door and then left the lock to manage the waiting alone, who designed the mechanism, installed it in its position, and walked into the room behind it. Sitting among the provisions and the purposes and the contents the lock was protecting, while the lock itself faced outward toward a world full of wrong keys with no presence on its side of the door. I was never behind the door. I was in front of it, with you. My child, every wrong key that entered your mechanism and failed to turn, I felt the grinding before you did, because my hands were on the lock, not operating it. The lock functions on its own design authority, holding it, steadying the mechanism during the moments when a wrong key's entry produced a vibration so intense that the lock's mounting was at risk of loosening from the door. A lock that is tested repeatedly by wrong keys can loosen from its frame, and a loosened lock loses the alignment that the right key requires to turn. I held you in alignment through every wrong key, through every grinding, through every withdrawal that left the mechanism vibrating with the residual stress of a key that engaged the tumblers partially and then departed without completing the turn. The alignment you carry right now, the precise, stable, perfectly mounted positioning that allowed the right key to enter and turn through every tumbler without resistance. That alignment was maintained by hands that were never behind the door, but always on the lock. And the hands that held you in alignment during the wrong keys are the same hands that guided the right key into the mechanism, steadying the entry, monitoring the tumblers, ensuring that the moment of completion occurred with the precision the design required. I know the exact wrong key that damaged your willingness to stay open to the right one, my dear one, and I was holding the lock when the grinding from that specific entry almost loosened you from the door. Not every wrong key produced equal impact. Most entered, engaged a few tumblers, stopped, and withdrew with minimal disruption to the mechanism. But there was one, the one your memory returns to when the subject of fitting is raised. The one whose cuts were so close to matching that the tumblers engaged deeper into the sequence than any previous key had reached, producing a hope so specific and so physiologically felt that the withdrawal did not just disappoint the lock, it traumatized the mechanism. My beloved child, I know which key it was, and I was closer to your lock during that entry than during any other. I felt the tumblers engaging past the point where previous keys had stopped. I felt the mechanism beginning to turn with a motion that mimicked completion so convincingly that the lock itself began releasing the protective tension it holds against unauthorized access. And then, at the tumbler where the cuts finally diverged, I felt the grinding, the specific, mechanical, unmistakable grinding of a key whose pattern departed from the lock's requirements by a margin so small that the failure felt more like betrayal than mismatch. That grinding sound is the one your doubt replays every time hope approaches. And the sound has been governing your willingness to receive with more authority than any theology of trust you have ever been taught. I know the sound. I heard it from inside the mechanism, and the God who heard the grinding is the same God telling you that the key currently turning in your lock is producing no grinding. Zero. The silence inside your mechanism right now. The absence of the sound that traumatized your willingness to stay open. That silence is the most accurate confirmation available. That what is turning is not another almost. Type no sound if God just identified the specific wrong key that traumatized your mechanism. The one whose grinding still echoes every time hope approaches. And the silence you are hearing right now, as the correct key turns, is the proof your lock needs that this one is not producing the sound that the wrong one left behind. Now that the key has turned and the door is open, there is one thing I need you to do, my beloved child, and it will determine whether the contents behind the door flow into your life fully or are restricted by a mechanism the wrong keys install. Stop testing the key. Your mechanism has developed a reflex that the wrong keys trained into it, a recurring verification protocol that periodically re-engages the tumblers against the key to check whether the cuts still match. The protocol was useful when wrong keys were in the mechanisms because it detected the mismatch before the lock fully committed to an unauthorized opening. But the key in your lock right now has already been verified. Every tumbler confirmed the match. The full turn was completed, and a lock that continues testing a verified key is not exercising discernment. It is performing a trauma response. Let the key rest in the mechanism. It belongs there. My child, I know what the testing looks like from the inside. It is the quiet, recurring, almost involuntary question that surfaces at random intervals. Is this still fitting? Are the tumblers still confirmed? Is the key going to shift and reveal a mismatch that was hidden during the initial turn? The question does not come from your design. It comes from the damage the wrong keys inflicted on a mechanism that learned through repeated trauma that what turns today may grind tomorrow. This key does not grind. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not at any point in the future. When the testing reflex activates, and it will activate because trauma responses do not dissolve on the first day of safety, override it, not with force, with the memory of the silence. The silence that your mechanism registered when the key entered without grinding. The silence that was absent during every wrong key and present during this one. Let the silence be the evidence that overrides the reflex. The key is verified. The match is confirmed. The maker, who cut both pieces from the same metal, is standing at the door confirming that what he forged together does not develop mismatches over time. You made it to the open door, my beloved child, and I need you to stand inside the completed mechanism long enough to feel what it means to finally hold the key you were forged to receive. Feel the fit. Not with the anxious testing your trauma wants to perform. With the quiet, settled, full-body awareness of a lock whose tumblers are resting in the exact position the key's cuts are holding them in. No grinding, no resistance. No familiar tension of a mechanism bracing for the moment the mismatch reveals itself. Just the click-by-click confirmation of a design that is doing precisely what it was drawn on the maker's table to do. The clicking is the sound of completion, and completion sounds nothing like what the wrong keys produced. I want to thank you for something the gap almost made impossible to sustain. Thank you for holding position. Thank you for remaining in the exact spot where I installed you when every wrong key and every failed turn and every grinding withdrawal told you that holding position was a fool's assignment. Thank you for staying shut when opening for the wrong key would have relieved the pressure of the gap temporarily at the cost of compromising what was behind the door permanently. My dear child, your faithfulness to your own design is the reason the right key found a lock worth turning. Let the tears come, not gap tears, not absence tears, not the familiar tears of a quiet hour, where the shaped emptiness rose up and pressed against your awareness, with an ache that had no remedy. Different tears, completion tears. The tears of a mechanism that just felt the precise thing it was shaped to receive enter, without resistance, and turn without grinding, and rest without testing. The gap is gone, not managed, not routed around, not philosophized into acceptance, gone, filled by the exact shape it was always outlining. And the maker who forged the lock and the key from the same original metal is standing at the door watching both pieces discover what he always knew, that they were never two things. They were always one thing separated by a journey that just ended. Type 1 metal if tears are forming from the overwhelming experience of something fitting without grinding for the first time. And you now know the lock and the key were always one piece that the maker separated for a journey that has finally brought them back together. You are not the lock that holds the shape of an absence anymore, my beloved child. That identity, the one who carried a gap with dimensions so precise it ached, the one who tested wrong keys and blamed the mechanism for not opening, the one who almost abandoned their position to go searching for what was always being carried toward them, the one who redesigned their entire life around a crater they stopped believing would ever be filled. That identity was complete as out of existence the moment the right key entered the mechanism, and every tumbler said yes. You are a completed lock now, and completed locks do not carry gaps. The incompleteness that shaped your quiet hours, your guarded posture, your cautious approach to hope in this specific area has been structurally eliminated. Not managed, not covered, eliminated by the presence of the precise thing the incompleteness was shaped to receive. The gap does not exist alongside the key. The gap was the key's outline, and an outline that has been filled by the thing it was outlining ceases to exist as absence and begins to exist as form. My dear child, you are no longer defined by what was missing. You are defined by what arrived. From this moment forward, you carry the identity of a lock whose key has been found, not a lock that is hoping the key exists, not a lock that is protecting itself from another wrong key, not a lock that is managing the gap through productive distraction and carefully constructed routines designed to root daily life around a crater. A lock that turned, fully, for the first time, and will never return to the untouched position it held for all the years it waited. The wrong keys are behind you. The gap is filled. The door is open. The contents are flowing. And the carrier who walked into your city with a suitcase has arrived at the address where the lock was installed, discovering for the first time that the journey they thought was theirs was always a delivery route designed by a maker who forged both pieces from the same metal and spent years navigating one toward the other. The key found the lock received the key, and the maker who separated them is watching from the doorway as two pieces of the same original metal discover what he always intended, that apart they are precision without purpose, but together they are the mechanism that opens everything he placed behind the door. Subscribe to this channel so that every time the maker sends a key toward the lock he installed in your life, the message reaches you before the wrong key trauma convinces you to stop holding position. You are not a lock carrying a gap anymore. You are a completed mechanism whose key arrived in a suitcase, carried across a divine delivery route. The next message carries the first inventory of what was behind the door, and what the opened lock reveals will prove that every day of holding position was worth every tumbler of the weight. Type key found if you are leaving this message permanently changed. Knowing the gap was never a defect but a design. The wrong keys were never failures but calibrations. The stillness was never passivity but faithfulness. And the maker who forged the lock and the key from one metal has just completed the delivery that every day of your waiting was always accumulating toward